Welcome to Mindshock. This is your host, Pierce McGuire, and we are finally doing the deep dive into what some consider the greatest and or funniest sitcom of all time. But is there an Illuminati conspiracy behind it all? Is it all social engineering hidden within the laugh track, the storylines, the characterizations, all to brainwash the masses in their alpha brainwave states while they watch the idiot box from the comfort of their own homes? That's what we'll be examining. And more in typical Mindshock fashion with logic and reason at the forefront. If you want to help support the podcast, you could donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. If you're not getting updates through YouTube, even the free Patreon tier will give you all the updates. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. And any questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunks of any kind, leave them in the comment section. Unless, of course, you are with us here live, then drop them in the live chat. I'll try to get to all of them. So welcome everyone. Ryan, Run Boston Bear, Psyop within a Psyop, the Ant1747, Heracles. So first of all, here's what we're going to be doing. Obviously, I've seen bits and pieces of episodes. I'm not 100% sure I have ever watched an entire episode start to finish. Obviously, I saw the segment with Jean-Claude Van Damme when he guest starred on Friends. But, yeah, no, I actually am not sure I have ever watched an entire episode start to finish. Now, because this show was so popular in the 90s, it was always on in the background somewhere. A lot of people watched it, a lot of people talked about it. But yeah, I never watched it. I have not actually watched it, as in interested enough to watch and follow episode to episode, etc. Obviously, I've seen some clips on YouTube and that sort of thing. Welcome, Flap Up. So, yeah, I'm going to be doing a breakdown. There's going to be one episode per season, so there's going to be 10. This is a 10-part series. We're going to be going over season 1 here. Now, what's so sneaky about this Illuminati propaganda MK Ultra programming, and I've talked about this before, is how a lot of times season 1 differs from the later seasons, and we're going to be getting into that. Everything from, somewhat wholesome nature of characters, storylines, life lessons, morality, etc. Like you see this with Gilmore Girls. If you haven't checked out those episodes, check them out. I'll be doing a lot more series as well. So what I'm going to be doing here, I'm going to be doing a deep dive recap of the season, all the storylines, the characters, etc. And I'm doing it blind because this isn't like Gilmore Girls where I actually watched every single episode before doing that one because that was pretty mind-shocking. Here, I don't believe I have to. And I'll explain why, but it'll be my thoughts on everything. And Flap Bob says, I never watched Friends. Describe in 3 words or less. Oh, that's a tough one. Can I use initials? What about New York sodomite lifestyles? Is that a good 3-word description of the show? I believe that's accurate. Again, I've watched bits and pieces of the show. I don't believe I've ever seen an episode start to finish, and I never followed or watched as it aired or after at any point. Heracles says, unrealistic, depraved yuppies. Oh, man. Yeah, okay, everything seems to always come back to the glamorization and normalization of degeneracy and sodomy specifically. And is this all in part to decline to make the West decline, the decline of the West? I've gone over this in numerous episodes. The decline of the West, 80s versus 90s, best decade, and just how entertainment has shaped or social engineered the average mind of the average goof out there. Now, what makes this so sneaky with sitcoms? Now, again, in the 80s sitcoms and prior, you actually had somewhat wholesome content with moral lessons to be learned. This is one of the first shows. I would probably say Beverly Hills 90210 might have been the linchpin for just the pushing of the normalization of degeneracy, narcissism. Heracles says Seinfeld is an entity unto itself, and I'll do that as well. I believe I'm trying to think. I've seen a lot of episodes. I'm trying to think. Did I see every single one? If you count on in the background, I think I've seen everyone or heard everyone in the back. But I've seen a lot of episodes. And you gotta hand it to Seinfeld. Like, the funniest thing about Seinfeld is his recognition that he's not funny. And he works it into the show. But we're gonna get it. I mean, I'll save that for the Seinfeld one. But yeah, 90210, Beverly Hills 90210 is my pick because there was a huge push into materialism, narcissism, ego domination, and of course, degeneracy and sodomy in that show. And a lot of young kids watched it. Like with Friends, I don't know how many, did a lot of 10-year-olds really watch Friends? Because with 90210, it was kind of controversial in its time because it was on at like 5 p.m. What was the Friends time slot? Let me check this. Because it was on, like, the latchkey generation could watch it without their parents even knowing. With Friends, let's see, what was the premiere time slot here? September 22nd, 1994. Yeah, Thursday, 8:30 p.m., the first half of the season. The second half of the season actually moved to 9:30 p.m., and then all the other seasons were 8 p.m. So a little harder to sneak if you're a young kid. So, again, in terms of just sheer mental, societal damage, I think 90210 would definitely be more responsible there. Not to mention, in Friends, like, again, for the people that have watched the show, they didn't really seem... They seemed semi-frugal, unless I got that wrong. I mean, New York isn't cheap, so... It wasn't really like... It didn't seem like a high lifestyle rich people type show. They seemed to be... I don't know about broke, but they seem... I think Rachel was broke, right? I do recall seeing, like, the first couple scenes of the first episode. So, yeah. And there's just so much darkness around the show, which people don't know, because, again, they're in that alpha brainwave state. There's a laugh track. It's comedy. So all of these ideologies can be subverted into the mind in an alpha brainwave state without people knowing. So is this one of the most obvious Operation Mockingbird, MK Ultra, CIA mind control programming to come out of Hollywood in sitcom fashion? All right, so that's what we'll be getting into and more. Does anybody have any questions before I get into the breakdown here? Welcome, Franklin. But yeah, the normalization of the sodomite corporate trying to make it in the world in a big city. Ideology of 20s into 30s, just the normalization of all of this. Flat Bob says that 70s show was my favorite sitcom growing up. Man, oh, I gotta do that Ashton Kutcher P. Diddy podcast. That one is dark. Ashton is fully embroiled in that. TJ Hoff says Phoebe is a flat earther. Is she? That's funny. Alright, so I'm just going to play some clips. Actually, before we get into that, let me do the intro. So this is just, I'm just going to go over all the storylines and then we'll get into it. So, brief synopsis here. Friends is a classic American sitcom aired from 94 to 04, set in New York City. It follows 6 close-knit friends navigating life, love, and careers in their 20s and 30s. Much of the show's action unfolds in their apartments and Central Perk, I remember I did laugh about that pretty hard. A coffee house where they often hang out. The series blends humor and heartfelt moments as the characters experience romantic entanglements, job struggles, and personal growth. So the okay, so the main characters here: Rachel Green, stylish and spirited. Rachel starts off uncertain about adult life, but is determined to make it on her own. She's driven, charming, and often finds herself balancing ambition and friendship. Ross Geller, intelligent, slightly awkward. Ross is fascinated by science, often takes life a little too seriously. He's sensitive, loyal, always trying to do the right thing, even if it doesn't go as planned. Monica Geller, organized, competitive, and deeply caring. Monica is the glue that often holds the group together. She's passionate about her career and has a strong sense of family and tradition. Chandler, known for his sharp wit and sarcasm, Chandler uses humor as a coping tool. Beneath his jokes is someone sincere and supportive, even if he struggles to express it. Joey Tribbiani, an aspiring actor with a big heart, simple outlook on life. Joey is lovable, fun-loving. He's the most easygoing of the group and often provides comic relief with his carefree attitude. Phoebe Buffet, free-spirited, artistic, and delightfully unpredictable. Phoebe brings a unique perspective to the group. Her quirky personality and unconventional wisdom makes her both hilarious and endearing. Now, right off the bat, even as the show was airing, and this is, for fans of the show, this is going to be very blasphemous. This was the type of sitcom that seemed like it was geared more to the low IQ viewers. Not that Seinfeld was particularly high IQ, but there was certain situational comedy in Seinfeld that did demand a little bit more intelligence to get. Whereas with Friends, it was kind of just very, very dumbed down comedy with dumbed down characters. Which I think is why it's so relatable, because the Dunning-Kruger masses, I mean, they could easily relate with any, depending on which archetype they were, they could relate with at least one of these characters. And if they're low IQ, they would find all this stuff funny, especially with the laugh track. Obviously, that's going to be blasphemous for the fans of the show. But again, we're going to get into why this show spiraled society. Now, everything we're seeing today in the 2020s, it wasn't like a magic switch got flipped. Everything was implanted in the minds of the masses in order for this degenerate spiral into a cesspool of degeneracy and filth that is the moral landscape of the West today. It all started, in my opinion, or at least the snowball started moving faster into a larger snowball, I would say in the mid-90s. Now, obviously, you could even argue it started World War I or even before that. But, just the mass acceleration was somewhere around the mid-90s, clearly evident by approximately, we've discussed this many times, you can go 2012, I would actually say 2011. It was probably quite evident. But if you didn't know what you were looking at, which I didn't really at the time, it's kind of a slow creep. But looking at it backwards with 2020 hindsight, you could actually see the moments where the West began to fall. And this show is clearly one of them. So, let's move on to the synopsis here, where this will be illustrated further. You know what's kind of crazy, though? Like, again, it's just kind of a funny thing to think about. Because obviously when you're young and dumb, it's not something you really think about, or you go in the opposite direction on purpose. But, like, what is traditionalism? Like, what's a good way to describe traditionalism? Things that worked, whereas the progressives, aka regressives, it's all about experimenting with things that are new. It's all about pretending other people are bigots if they don't agree, while being bigoted and not accepting traditional ideas, which have been proven to work over decades, if not centuries, if not millennia. So think about how different this show would be. Like, let's say their personalities are not that different, but they have non-negotiable principles and values. Like, for example, let's say none of these characters were promiscuous or narcissistic or ego-centered. How would their lives have turned out, and how would the show look like? Just a thought experiment. But they're all pretty much, I mean, they're all pretty much degenerate sodomites. And their lives kind of reflect that. Not just theirs. I mean, big city living. I've lived in a few cities. It's pretty much the sodomite lifestyle. It's kind of difficult. I mean, obviously there are some. You can find straight edge, traditional, high value people in cities, and they can make it work. Especially if they're intelligent, mentally strong, they can make it work. But for the most part, the majority of people are not, and this show really highlighted that. So, just quick thought experiment before we get deeper here. Just give me 1 second here. Okay. Now, again, just because I said this is kind of like a low IQ show, that doesn't mean the writing was that bad or anything, or that the storylines were uninspired or completely unoriginal, although there were many that were. There's obviously a reason the show lasted as long as it did, other than the Illuminati MK Ultra programming. All right, so the series opens in Central Perk, New York coffee house, where 5 friends, Monica, Ross, Chandler, Joey, and Phoebe, share their routines, jokes, and anxieties about adulthood. Their lives are interrupted when Rachel Green storms in wearing a wedding dress, having just run out on her wedding to a wealthy orthodontist named Barry. Once Monica's high school best friend, Rachel has become out of touch and materialistic, but she's now broken away from the path set for her and has no job, no apartment, no plan. Here, let me get some clips from this season. No audio, just as I narrate this. Fair use, obviously. Rachel moves in with Monica, and the friends begin teaching her how to navigate adulthood on her own terms. She tries to rely on her father's money, but ultimately cuts up her credit cards in a bold gesture of independence. She takes her first ever job as a waitress at Central Perk, despite having no experience or aptitude for it. She's often clumsy, forgetful, and uncertain about her life, but slowly begins to mature and adjust to the real world. Meanwhile, Ross, Monica's brother, is in his own state of emotional upheaval. His wife, Carol, has recently come out as a lesbian and left him. Okay, so here's the thing about that. You kind of see this, the trans agenda and the homo agenda, whatever you want to call it. It's being pushed really heavy. It starts to get pushed really heavy in the 90s. In the 80s, not so much. Not so much. 80s and prior. In the 90s, I mean, Dawson's Creek, of course, a few other shows, they push it really hard to make sure the young minds of the West are inundated with the normalization and programming of the homo agenda. Because if, and again, I don't claim anything is true or untrue, this is Mindshock, where the motto is. The only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. But if there is some kind of vast Illuminati agenda to destroy the nuclear family, how would you do it? Obviously, there's many ways to achieve that goal. And obviously, if you have as many homo people or trans people as possible not reproducing, that could achieve that goal. So you saw a lot of these storylines being pushed. I mean, even in Seinfeld, too. Not long after, she reveals she's pregnant with his child, and she and her partner Susan want Ross to be involved, but on their own terms. How original is this? Wasn't George's girlfriend or fiance also named Susan, and didn't she also leave him for a lesbian? I wonder which storyline happened first. For any Seinfeld and Friends aficionados, because I don't know what episode that was in Seinfeld. She and her partner Susan want Ross to be involved, but on their terms. Ross is heart conflicted and struggling to accept this new version of his life. Still, he tries to be part of the pregnancy, attending sonogram appointments and parenting classes. These moments are often awkward and tense, especially in the presence of Susan, but they're also quietly poignant. Ross also buys a pet monkey, Marcel, as a way to combat his loneliness. As Ross begins adjusting to his impending fatherhood, he also reawakens long dormant feelings for Rachel. He's had a crush on her since high school, and now with her back in his life and becoming more grounded, those feelings intensify. However, he fails to express them directly. Several moments almost lead to confession, notably during a blackout when he tries to tell her how he feels, but is interrupted. Rachel, meanwhile, meets Paolo, a charming but shallow Italian neighbor, during that same blackout and begins a brief romantic fling, much to Ross's dismay. Throughout the season, Monica deals with pressure from her parents, especially her mother, who continues to favor Ross and criticize Monica's life choices. She dates a series of men, some of whom seem promising but turn out to be immature, dishonest, or problematic. You know what else is kind of curious? How much, now this is opening up a whole nother can of worms, but this is Mindshock, where we leave no stone unturned. How many, this is actually kind of a known issue for actors, where they play all these different roles, they don't even know who they are. But what is not talked about are these long-standing TV actors who play the same role for years, if not more than a decade. Did playing the role, for example, for Jennifer Aniston, now she, a serial dater, she was married, but now she's divorced, no kids, whatever. How much of this sodomite, degenerate, promiscuous lifestyle of the character that she played that was normalized, did she kind of reflect in her real life? I'm not claiming to know, just asking the question for all the triggered goofs out there. I'm just asking the question. And again, in a lot of these sitcoms and TV shows, obviously, feminism and all of these Illuminati society, familial, subverting ideologies that are pushed to brainwash the masses into degeneracy. Flapop says, I think for some of them, the acting isn't real acting, but rather method acting. Yeah, I mean, if you've seen the breakup with Aniston and Vince Vaughn, actually, one of my favorites, one of the few Hollywood actors that I actually find kind of amusing. That was an interesting movie. I've only seen it once. I probably should watch it again, but I thought it was kind of interesting. And unlike most rom-coms, so originality points there. But yeah, no, I mean, multiple roles of the same thing. Like, how many of these famous Hollywood actresses that have all the glamour, the fame, the money, everything, they don't end up happy in life. They don't get their happy ending in life because of that. Would they have been happier if right out of high school or whenever they, if they didn't embrace the ideology, the Illuminati ideology of feminism to destroy society, and they had a more traditional mindset, and they had gotten married young and had a bunch of kids, would they be happier? Now, obviously, certain people would, certain people wouldn't. We don't want to fall for anecdotal logical fallacies, but across the board, statistically, would they have been happier? Interesting question. Interesting question for sure. So, it's, and again, these shows, they all push the feminist mindset, and you have most of the male characters are quite emasculated. They do not take authority in anything. And again, I'm not claiming this is true. But for the Bible readers out there, if the man is supposed to take the lead and the authority, the woman doing so would lead to death, destruction, and the fall of society. How has the feminist experiment fared with this in the past half century or so? Has society gotten better or worse as a result of the Western world embracing this Illuminati feminist ideology? Are more people happy or less happy? Should we bring up some stats? I mean, this is Mindshock. Might as well bring up some stats on that. At least put up some receipts. Even though I'm just asking questions, I'm not claiming anything is true or untrue. But let's put up some receipts here. So it's kind of interesting that the younger a liberal woman is, the more mental health conditions they have. Now this kind of became prevalent in the 90s, I would say. I kind of noticed this. Just because in the 80s, there'd be, let's say, maybe the one odd girl in school that was kind of this feminist, liberal, woke goof, for lack of a better term. Once you got into the mid to late 90s, I mean, you're talking more than half of any particular class in school. I mean, it kind of exploded. Let's bring up a few more receipts here before I get back to the breakdown. Definitely going to trigger a lot of goofs. It's going to trigger a lot of goofs. So let's look at what happened here. So let's look at what happened with the feminist experiment. So women today are better educated, better paid than in 1970. So here, females are actually surpassing males in master degrees as of, oh wow, as of the late 80s, by 1990? 1987-ish? That's interesting. I thought it happened a little later, but there we go. Now, far and away the most credentialed. They get the most degrees from these indoctrination facilities that push this Democrat and liberal ideology. Now, let's see what that did to their happiness. So, between 1970 and 2005, women's self-reported happiness scores have declined, both in the absolute and relative to men's scores. So that's kind of curious. So life satisfaction in the United States has plummeted. I mean, both for women and men, obviously. The feminist experiment has caused a lot of issues across the board with society. Less people getting married, less people having children, and wages for both genders plummeting because there's so many people going for the same jobs. So, and inflation. I mean, there's other factors, obviously. Inflation, a lot of status, corruption. I mean, there's many factors. But just look at the plummet since feminism. Just an absolute plummet. What else is interesting is looking at the ages here. This is also kind of interesting. Happiness by age. Women's happiness goes down from age 20, whereas men's happiness goes up. Very interesting. Just things to ponder, particularly for the authority-worshipping cultists that bootleg everything pushed by the establishment and indoctrination facilities. Flatbob says it's gotten exponentially worse. Yeah, this doesn't even factor the past 5 years. I mean, yeah, the past 5 years, everything went off a cliff even more. But that was before that. I thought it was interesting to look at the stats before the plummet in the past few years. But let's continue here. Throughout the season, Monica deals with pressure from her parents, especially her mother, who continues to favor Ross. Okay, I went over that. So she dates a series of men, some of whom seem promising but turn out to be immature, dishonest, and problematic. One turns out to be using her to make an ex jealous. Another, Ethan, turns out to be far younger than he initially claimed. These relationships often leave her disillusioned and questioning whether she'll ever find someone who respects her. Professionally, she's shown to be a talented chef, but her career remains uncertain, especially after a critical opportunity to impress a restaurant owner goes awry. He shows up high and forgets the entire tasting. Chandler's story revolves around his fear of intimacy and performing mask of sarcasm he wears. He falls into an on-again, off-again loop with Janice, a loud and clingy woman he can't seem to break up with successfully. Chandler also tries to quit smoking, repeatedly failing and being goaded by the group. In one key subplot, he impulsively quits his job out of frustration, hoping to find more meaningful work, only to end up taking the same job again, highlighting his fear of change and sense of entrapment in adult life. Joey, Chandler's roommate, struggles to find stable work as an actor. He is cast as Al Pacino's butt double, but is fired for overacting. He goes through a series of comedic romantic escapades and continues trying to land better roles, including a recurring role in a soap opera. He's portrayed as dim-witted and womanizing, but increasingly shows surprising emotional depth and loyalty to his friends. When he learns about that his father is cheating on his mother, Joey confronts him, only to discover his mother already knows and is simply choosing to ignore it for the sake of the marriage. Phoebe, the group's spiritual and eccentric friend, frequently surprises others with her tragic backstory. She was homeless, her mother committed suicide, her twin sister Ursula, a recurring character from Mad About You, wants little to do with her. Wow, that's another show that deserves a deep dive. Yeah, that was another degenerate spiral type show. I've seen a couple episodes start to finish of that show, but I really don't remember too much about it. I would have seen them during their original air. Phoebe maintains a quirky, positive outlook, often acts as the group's moral compass. She receives a large sum of money in error from her bank and gives it all away, only to receive more from a soda company after finding a human thumb in a can. Wow. A little bit of Illuminati symbolism and subliminal programming there. Or actually, not really subliminal. I mean, that's pretty overt. She continues singing bizarre, more like a wink and a nod. She continues singing bizarre songs as central perks, such as Smelly Cat, and briefly dates a shy, brilliant physicist named David, who is forced to leave for a research opportunity in Minsk, leaving her heartbroken. Several group-based episodes strengthen their dynamic and illustrate the theme of chosen family. In the Thanksgiving episode, each of the Thanksgiving individual plans fall apart, so they gather for a thrown-together meal after a runaway balloon disrupts Monica's turkey. This becomes the first of many holiday celebrations that will define their friendship. In the New Year's Eve episode, everybody scrambles to find dates, breaking a pact to spend as a group. Ross brings Marcel, his monkey, as a companion, emphasizing his isolation. Meanwhile, Chandler ends up rekindling his doomed relationship with Janice again. Here's another thing, too. In terms of the MK Ultra Illuminati programming, when you show other characters in these loops or cycles they can't break, that almost reinforces the normalcy of such cycles, so all the brainwashed peon masses that are simply wage slaves wasting their lives, it's almost a certain normalization of said loops. Which is kind of interesting to think about as well. If anybody in the chat has any thoughts so far on this show, everything we're going over so far. I mean, it's pretty dark. I mean, I don't think people would be expecting this dark of a breakdown. Just the normalization of these broken people and their broken lives. And that so many people reflect this. I mean, obviously not with the over-the-top antics or the exaggeration of all this, but on a lower level, more boring level per se. There's people stuck on all these loops in these big cities, and they could really identify with all of these characters, even if it's not that particular loop. In another key episode, Joey begins dating Ursula, Phoebe's estranged twin. The relationship hurts Phoebe, who tries to hide her feelings until Ursula starts ghosting Joey. Phoebe eventually impersonates Ursula to break up with him gently, showing rare vulnerability. In a different storyline, Monica and Rachel swap identities at the hospital so Rachel can use Monica's health insurance, which leads to a series of comedic misunderstandings with two attractive doctors played by George Clooney and Noah Weil. The group plays poker together in a humorous but competitive episode where Rachel, Monica, and Phoebe demand to be treated equally in a guy's game. They lose, but Rachel nearly wins a critical hand, prompting a subtle moment of respect from Ross. In the penultimate episodes, Ross becomes more emotionally invested in his upcoming child's birth and finally bonds with Susan. Carol goes into labor and the entire group rushes to the hospital. Ross and Susan argue about names and roles in the delivery room, but ultimately witness the birth together, sharing a powerful emotional moment. The group looks on with pride, especially Joey, who offers comfort to another pregnant woman giving birth alone, revealing his sensitive side. Then comes the season finale. It's Rachel's birthday. Ross has left for a work trip to China. Chandler, unaware that Ross wanted to keep something private, lets it slip that Ross has been in love with Rachel for months. Rachel is shocked. Slowly, she begins to reflect on all the things Ross has done for her, things she previously overlooked. When she opens his birthday gift, a meaningful item from her past, she is visibly moved. The episode ends with her rushing to the airport to meet Ross upon his return, only to arrive too late. She waits at the gate with flowers in hand. The screen cuts to black as she watches the arrival's gate, unsure of what she'll say, but ready to say something. Alright, so that's the gist of season 1. So what's the takeaway here? I mean, one can only think. I mean, it's kind of crazy to really think about on how civilizations have lived in the past versus now. Now you have young adults, especially extremely young adults, like fresh out of high school or even college. I mean, most of them are mental midgets. Are they really equipped to live in the adult world? I mean, would they be better off under the guidance of not just their parents, but it takes a village, like village elders, etc.? Like, is modern city living conducive to a happy and fulfilled and meaningful life? Not that people can't make it work. Again, you'll always have the outliers. But for most people, with their current intelligent levels and emotional maturities, is it even possible? I mean, you see it in shows like this, with just the normalization of the chaos and the turmoil involved in living a so-called modern degenerate lifestyle, pursuing career stability, etc. Like, these goofs, even in their 30s, they're not really equipped emotionally or in mental intelligence to handle most of these situations. There's no real backbone. There's no real support. Now again, I'm not a Christian. I'm not advocating that the Bible is true. I don't claim it's true or untrue. But people with really, really set, non-negotiable values, would they fare better in any of these life situations? Flat Bob says, our forefathers would roll over in their graves if they seen the state of the world today. Yeah. Yeah, ACV says, saw this notification, I've never clicked faster. Did you just get here? I just finished summarizing season 1. We're going to do 1 episode per season. But it's just such a darkness to this sitcom. And as we go over the other seasons in the following episodes, I mean, we can reflect back to season 1, because as I open this, and as I mentioned in the Gilmore Girls series, Season 1 is usually set up a little bit more wholesome, a little bit more moral. Not that this particular show was that much, but and then as people become emotionally invested in the characters to the point where the MK Ultra programming in the alpha brainwave state of watching a comedy on the idiot box from the comfort of your own home, comfortable sofa, bed, whatever, that kind of programming can seep into your mind much easier when you're already invested. So a lot of times, the first 1 or 2 seasons of a longer running show, it's all there to get into your mind and appear to be a certain way. And then the later series, a lot of the subversion happens. So yeah, I mean, we got some people in here. Anybody's got any thoughts on this show? Who's watching? Has anybody in here actually watched the entire show? I mean, if I didn't say it at the beginning, massive spoiler alert. I mean, I'm going through synopses of all of the seasons here blind without having. I mean, I've seen bits and pieces of all of this, so I was somewhat familiar with some of this. Because again, in the 90s, the show was so popular, it was always on in the background in TV. Anatomy Conspiracy says, I have seen most of them. Okay, Anatomy Conspiracy with your name. Are you new here? I'm not sure. I remember seeing. That's a great name. What are your thoughts on everything thus far in the MK Illuminati programming through sitcoms like this show? Is this one of the linchpins of the decline of the West starting in the mid-90s? Again, just the normalization of all of this degeneracy, sodomy, narcissism. I mean, even though these characters are they're really nowhere near as entitled as, the average goof walking around today. I mean, I mean, everybody's kind of always looking out for number one for the most part. Not always, but. Anatomy Conspiracy says, been around for a while, love your channel. I didn't consider the show in that way, but you are changing my mind. Have you also watched Gilmore Girls? If you have, see, somebody claiming to have some kind of CIA insider info emailed me. Simply watch every episode of Gilmore Girls. Now, it's somewhat of I kind of took it as somewhat of a dare, because it's a number of seasons, but again, when you exist outside of time and space and you don't have to sleep, I mean, I could do multiple seasons like nothing. Now, Friends, I didn't think I had to, and Friends is a lot. I just don't want to. I don't want that in my head. But other shows, I will be watching all of them. I find them, especially ones that I find more interesting. But when you watch them with eyes to see, and not allowing yourself to be programmed. See, if you understand that when you're in a relaxed alpha brainwave state, as you are, when you watch idiot box programming, particularly of the comedic genre, you are susceptible to that kind of program. Flat Bob says, you're in contact with alphabet agencies, Bruce? Cannot confirm or deny, my friend. JR is supposedly a government employee. I'm going to see if I could schedule him for like a jumbo episode, because we got a lot to go over. I've been meaning to ask him if he has any knowledge on Steven Seagal ever working for the agency, or people who work with the agency, as well as quite a few other topics. Haven't had JR in a bit. Anatomy says, yes, one of my ex-girlfriends, I have watched all Gilmore Girls, but 15 years ago. I think Gilmore Girls is all about the femme movement. Very quick, non-funny jokes, always about the patriarch. Have you seen my episodes on it? My 2 episodes? If you have not, you have to watch it. Because in my opinion, it is one of the biggest blowings of the whistle on the Illuminati feminist agenda. Flat Bob says, in the words of JR, can't confirm or deny, Bruce. Anatomy says, I haven't, because you pump out so many episodes, I will do that. Yeah. I mean, there's only like 1,000. I mean, come on. It's not like there's 50,000. Okay, let's see the amount of videos we have on the channel at this moment. Yeah, there's only 841. I mean, that's not a lot. I still have a few from the old channel I haven't gotten back up. Maybe another 10 possibly. I got to double check some of them, but yeah, maybe a couple more Bigfoot ones. So what does everybody think here? Is this simply the Illuminati, the CIA through Operation Mockingbird and MK Ultra programming. Is this a way to just social engineer the masses into being sodomites, degenerate goofs, and ruin their own lives and chance of happiness, all under the guise of normalcy and a few laughs? I mean, dark stuff. I mean, that is a dark theory. I do not claim anything is true or untrue, but does it appear that way? Certainly appears that way on the surface, does it not? Does it not? Flat Bob says spot on. Seinfeld's even nastier because Seinfeld does it with what's the best way to put it? Seinfeld does it in a mean-spirited way, which we'll have to do. I'll do a deep dive on that as well. But Friends kind of does it in a slightly more bubbly vibe. But that's another thing, is if it's all part of the agenda would include different strokes for different folks. Because not everybody likes both Seinfeld and Friends. In fact, especially at the time, most people were one or the other. Most people were one or the other. I was definitely on the Seinfeld side. Not that I particularly liked it. I actually didn't really think it was that funny. Only upon rewatches years later, I thought some of the situational humor was actually somewhat intelligent and amusing. And Newman's always solid. But, and Kramer's quite funny as well. But, yeah, no, just, again, even with shows like Seinfeld, the promotion of degeneracy and narcissism. Always looking out for number one, and the normalization of that kind of attitude, and the normalization of misery and mean-spiritedness. ACV, a good point here. A distraction from the critical issues of the day. An endless time sink to keep the plebes entertained and passive. The peasants, yes. The bread and circus. But it's even darker than that, though. It's not just bread and circus. It's bread and circus with MK Ultra Illuminati brainwashing programming built in. Because there's plenty of more quality bread and circus. See, I'm a big fan of combat sports. That's my bread and circus. I like watching combat sports. Was never too much into the other sports, ball sports, but combat sports I found entertaining. And you could also kind of appreciate the level of skill required, particularly if you're interested in martial arts. But this isn't just with some of these sitcoms and TV shows. It's not just bread and circus. It's bread and circus laced with MK Ultra Illuminati programming. And what makes it so much darker are the sitcoms with the laugh tracks. Because once again, in an alpha brainwave state, particularly in comedies where you're relaxed and expecting to laugh, certain parts of the brain let their guard down. Like when you're watching a news broadcast, an alleged news, obviously fake news, MSM fake news, but there's still a certain amount of lens. Obviously, some brainwashed goofs don't really have it, but it's more of a critical eye, especially nowadays. I mean, maybe, 80s or prior, not so much, but nowadays, people generally will be watching the news with a critical eye, watching for some kind of slant or whatever. But with sitcoms, you're so relaxed when you watch it. It's so sneaky and nasty, and that's why they do it. Anatomy says, yes, try watching Seinfeld without the laugh track. It is incredibly dark and not funny. Have not done that, but maybe we should do that for certain segments. I remember Owen Benjamin broke down Seinfeld, and it was... Owen Benjamin's breakdown of Seinfeld is funnier than Seinfeld. Again, I'm not claiming Owen Benjamin is good or bad, but that man is funny most of the time when he's not spiraling. Franklin says, I don't watch news anymore. Yeah, it's pretty tough. Pretty tough. So, yeah, I mean, that's what we have here. I don't want to make all these episodes countless hours long because we're going to be going a season at a time. And then, especially in the last episode, we're going to reflect back on the changes through the seasons and how that affected the psyche. So, Anatomy says you've seen most of the Friends episodes. I wonder if there's anybody else in here that's seen every episode and watched them all as they aired. Because it would be interesting to have to have that viewpoint and opinion. Because, like I said, I've only seen bits and pieces, possibly not even not sitting at attention watching an episode start to finish. Flat Bob says, my buddy did. He loved Friends. Well, get him in here. Get him into the chat for the next one. Is your buddy a coincidence theorist or a conspiracy theorist? Or is he just or is he just completely apathetic and checked out and only watches movies and TV shows, entertainment for escapism? Because that's a whole nother category of goof. There are people out there that actually really don't have much of opinion on anything. Like, the apathy has reached all-time highs. They're not necessarily denying the conspiracies. They're not clinging desperately to the official narratives of the establishment. They just want to watch their entertainment or play their video games. They're not really invested in anything other than their entertainment. Their entertainment cope. Flat Bob says he's a super normie. I try to tell him about certain things, but if it doesn't affect his day-to-day, he doesn't care. Mindless. It's wild. Yeah, we all know people like that. The programmed ones, the unawakened ones. And ironically, like, shows like this are part of the programming. I mean, watching shows like this is why so many coincidence theorists exist. Franklin says, I've seen almost 3 first seasons. Or 3 of the first seasons. Or the first 3 seasons. Is that what you mean, Franklin? Of Friends? Yeah, no spoilers beyond the season. So we're only going to do spoilers for the season we're going over. Because I don't even know the story. I don't even know how all of this ends. And there's no way I'm going to waste my time watching this whole series when I got so many other series to watch. I mean, this one is just, again, not for me to actually watch straight through. There's plenty of other shows I will do it for that are kind of deeper. This one's just a very superficial show. So, but I am curious. I'm actually kind of curious on how it ended. Just how, the storylines and all of this. Flat Bob says, I'd rather listen to a Bruce McGuire overview than watch the show itself. I'd rather do the overview than watch this particular show. I have quite a few other shows coming up where I'm watching them all the way through in order to form a more definitive opinion. But with a show like this, I don't think it's necessary. Again, if somebody believes I'm off base on any of this that has actually seen everything, I mean, again, feel free to jump in. But on the surface here, I don't think I'm missing anything. Because, again, I've seen clips of it. I've seen it when it was on TV. I'm very familiar with the antics of the characters in general. Same thing with Big Bang Theory. I might have actually seen every episode of Big Bang Theory, which is kind of funny because I didn't really like the show. A friend of mine recommended it, so I ended up watching, actually season 1 I remember being not that terrible. And maybe not even season 2. And then the rest of the seasons, it just got worse and worse progressively. They did sneak in some stuff in there about adrenochrome and other Illuminati Easter eggs that were quite dark. So I'll probably do a breakdown of that show as well. I think what's kind of curious, I wonder, I'd have to double check if it was the same writers from season 1 all the way through. But for Big Bang Theory, because in the first 2 seasons, it was semi-original, because it was kind of like, instead of Revenge of the Nerds, it was kind of just day in the life of nerds, so to speak. And it was kind of interesting, some of the technical jargon, even though obviously everything on the astrophysics side is obviously nonsense, but just, with some of the tech that they were talking about, and then they're also kind of fanboying sci-fi shows and stuff. The way they talked was kind of interesting, because usually it's only one character, that one cliched character. But they had a whole bunch of characters like that, and it was the one character, Penny, who wasn't like that, which was kind of interesting. So just a more original setup, and then that just devolved into nonsense pretty quickly. That wasn't even funny, but What was kind of interesting is I think there was a lot of, again, I watched it as it aired, so it's been a while. They blew the whistle on quite a few things within scientism and the establishment. And I don't believe that was accidental. They worked it in there, which I thought was kind of, and not funny. It wasn't funny. The show really didn't seem to be funny, and other than maybe season 1 and 2. Anybody got an opinion on a Big Bang Theory in the chat here? But yeah, I'm gonna keep this one short. I'm gonna try to keep them all under an hour. Obviously, the jumbo would be 10 hours. There's 10 seasons. Flat Bob says I only watched a couple episodes. Yeah, I mean it's yeah. I mean it's hard to recommend, but Heracles says I never watched a full episode, but I have seen shorts, and some of them are kind of funny. Yeah, it's also probably one of the most uneven shows because there are segments that actually are pretty funny from almost every season. But you're watching, whatever, 20-plus minute episode, and 2 minutes of it might be absolutely hilarious. And the 2 minutes might not be consecutive, might be spread out. But the rest of the show is just, it's just not good. Anatomy says, I like the one episode on the space station. It actually looked the same as NASA videos. To me, it was a reveal. I don't even remember that one, but there was quite a few reveals on that. Just the later episode, the later seasons, there were quite a few reveals where I think they blew the whistle on scientism, which was kind of interesting. Flat Bob says, revelation of the method, yes. Yeah, I don't particularly like the show, but a friend of mine recommended it who has generally pretty good taste. And I don't even want to call him wrong. Season 1 was kind of interesting. Just the premise, the originality. I don't remember much of season 2, but yeah, I'll probably have to do a full breakdown on that as well. But I just, in this case with Friends, I actually don't, I mean, call it a crazy opinion. I actually don't think I have to sit through and watch every episode. I mean, I watched clips of it. I watched some clips of, I watched clips to prepare for this as well, just to make sure I got the tone and everything. So it's not like 100% blind. But that's what we'll be going over. And one of the most interesting things that I've mentioned before, especially on the Gilmore Girls series, is that there seems to be a concerted effort to get viewers comfortable and invested, to lure them, like a stranger luring a kid with candy to get it comfortable at the beginning. I know that's really dark, but that's almost how I mean, think about the psychology of the MK Ultra engineering scum that are willing to do this to society. Think about their psychology. That might not be that drastic of a comparison, because it's just so nasty to set up a show as like kind of wholesome, kind of nice. Not that this was that completely, but compared to later seasons, because I've seen this done on so many shows. Like, Gilmore Girls Season 1 was actually kind of wholesome. Kind of. It was, and again, it was a blowing of the whistle on the feminist, the Illuminati feminist agenda to destabilize and destroy society. And that's, I mean, nobody ever, I don't know how many people watched it through that lens, but it's actually a great show if you watch it through that lens, which is kind of how I watched it. And I watched it recently. I did not watch it as it aired. I saw, just zero interest. But now, I'm rewatching a couple shows. I don't want to spoil which ones. I want them to be kind of a surprise, because some of them people just not be expecting. And I never in a million years would ever have wanted to watch any of them. But through this lens of this is Illuminati MK Ultra programming, they're actually kind of fascinating to watch. So that's it for now. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us for another edition of the Mindshock podcast. This is the Friends series. Plenty more to come. Each episode will be breaking down a season, and we'll be comparing the seasons and examining anything and everything in typical Mindshock fashion with logic and reason at the forefront. If you want to help support the channel, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share. Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comments section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.